Angie Le Mar, welcome to Profile.
Thank you.
I'm very delighted to have you, especially given, you know, your history, a woman of many, many firsts, a person of many firsts, not a woman of many firsts. British performer of Jamaican heritage, multi-award winning, comedian, writer, director, producer. I didn't list author on this list originally, but author as well. Born in the UK to Jamaican parents.
That's right.
First black comedian to sell out London's West End, not first black female comedian. First black comedian to sell out London's West End. The first British performer to storm the legendary Harlem Apollo. You know, everyone knows the Apollo. And when you think about all of the other sort of accomplishments, first big break, Funny Black Women on the Edge, founded straight to audience productions, created and hosted Ladies Talk International, ran the Angie Le Mar School of Expression, and also used your work to tackle different kinds of issues like social issues. For instance, you have what I would call an amazing piece looking at slavery from a sort of comic perspective, which was just fascinating to watch. Guest appearances on ITV's Loose Women and Sky News, a long list of different kinds of things. When you think of all of these different kind of roles that you played, which one do you like the most? Author, comedian, director, producer?
I think it'll always start with stand-up comedy. Because the thing about stand-up comedy is being able to have an idea in your mind and think it's funny, and then go in front of an audience and go, do you think it's funny too?
Some people might think that's terrifying.
It's very terrifying, especially if people say, I don't think it's funny, and they don't laugh. But I think for me, it's just knowing that I love the sound of laughter, and knowing that I've created that as something that from I was a little girl. You know, when I used to make my brothers laugh or make my parents laugh, I felt like I achieved something. So to become Britain's first black female stand-up comedian was a big achievement that I didn't expect.
So grew up in London, in Lewisham.
Yes.
It's an area in London. Talk a little bit first about what the community was like.
So growing up in Lewisham was a black community and very culturally different. So we had different people from different parts of the Caribbean, and our parents from the Windrush generation, growing up with that, growing up in church, growing up with that type of background, really, you know, in hindsight, looking back on it, gave me my confidence, gave me my sense of who I am. You know, we come from a line of people who are confident and trust themselves and can't be told, you know, dictated to. So that really fed into my psyche as this is who I want to be in the world. So for me, that was where my confidence came from, being around that community, being in the church, just being in a family that was loved. I have great parents. Let's
talk a little bit about your parents. Yeah. You say Windrush generation. For Jamaicans who are not familiar, those are the Windrush was a ship, and the generation really is representative of the people who went to rebuild Britain after the war.
That's right.
But they were not all welcome.
No, you know, when our parents came over and they were looking for places to live, it was no blacks, no dogs, no Irish. Because my dad said he came with a 5-year plan. He just wanted to make enough money to buy a truck so that when he comes back to Jamaica, he could drive his truck. For what our parents have gone through and the difficult in racism and what they did to build England, they built it, you know, and changed the future of it. And so much is owed to the Windrush generation. They're not fairly treated and haven't been fairly treated, but we know the story, and we know the history of that.
They weren't just building the UK itself, though, because they were also contributing to their own country. And you also had an opportunity to sort of see and grow up in Jamaica in a sense.
Yes, I remember I used to go stay with my grandmother, and obviously she was making suck-suck. So I remember having to tie the suck-suck and sell it to the kids when they were coming. And there were times when some of the kids didn't have the money and I couldn't help but say, don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. And I ended up buying the suck-suck for the kids. But I was around that time and watched my mum build her house. So when she bought the land, and I said to her, so you're going to build a house? Because I don't know building a house. All I know is you buy a house. And she goes, that's the land we're going to have, and we're going to build a house, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. And I was so blown away by her thinking. But when I saw the house that my parents built, knowing that this was her dream to come back home, I'm so incredibly proud of my parents. And I adore their journey to know that they came from little and built much.
How did the comedy come up, though? You say you were always, you were always making jokes?
Yeah, my dad's got a sense of humour, you know, and I know it's a gene thing because my son is a stand-up comedian as well, and my cousin is, so we've got comedy in the gene. But my dad was very funny, and he would just tell jokes without even really letting it be seen as projecting jokes, but we just always found Daddy funny. And I loved that. And so we used to get blackouts back in the day, and that means the electricity would go off. Yes. So the family would come into one room, and then the candles would come out, and that's when I knew I had my captive audience. And I would pretend to be my mum and say, "Oh, Martin, you find a thing for me?" And then I pretend to be my daddy, "Dirty, don't do that." And I just pretend to be them. And they laughed, and my brothers used to laugh. And I used to think, wow, this is quite interesting. I said something, you laughed. And that was it for me. I went to school, got kicked out of school because the jokes went too far. And then I went into the comedy scene. And I remember starting in a blues dance. And I remember thinking to myself, because I'd watched Whoopi Goldberg, and I thought, I could do that. And I remember this guy was on the DJ, and I said, "Can I take the mic and just tell some jokes?" And he looked.
You just went up to him and asked to tell jokes? In
a blues dance. Now, if you know a blues dance, it's dark, and the lights, and if you're going to interrupt people's scrubbing, you need to be funny.
Yes.
So I said to him, "I got some jokes," and he goes, "All right, we have a gal who want to tell 2 jokes. I'm going to move back." And I remember thinking, oh, you could have said it better than that. He turned the light on, and I started pretending to, you know, be a woman talking about relationships, like, "Ladies, don't you hate when men do this?" and blah, blah, blah. And they started laughing. And that's how I became Britain's first stand-up black female comedian. And so I was getting booked left, right and centre. We have this girl who tells jokes. You should book her.
I want to talk a little bit more about that, but we have to take our first break on Profile. My guest is the multi-award winning British performer, writer, director, producer and author of Jamaican parentage, Angie Le Mar. We're back with you after the break.